Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today, where we're looking at lesson number 3. And the big part of that is our sector map or sector compass. And we're going to go through and look at what the assignment is asking for and look at a couple of examples, as well as looking at the site and regional challenges as well. But that's pretty straightforward. So maybe what we'll do is I will share my screen and we'll take a peek. And I will also let's see here. I'll just put the Q&A document link in the chat. There we go. All right. Okay, so we are taking a look at lesson number 3, and this is in some ways a continuation of our site analysis. And you'll probably find with the course that we're doing a lot of that before we actually get into any sort of design mode. There we go. And the sector compass or sector map is a great starting point with this. And it's something that my wife and myself do with all our work. This is our beginning, our first design sheet, and something we share with our clients and make sure that we are reading the site the way they do as well. So let's take a peek at that. So I'm not really going to go over the site and regional challenges survey. I think that is pretty obvious. I will bring up the, oops, no, we don't want to do that today. Where are we? There we are. Let's bring up the template file. Yeah, so I think the regional site and regional challenges survey is pretty straightforward. Just taking a quick peek at it, we're just trying to get a macro of not so much the projects, well, a little bit of the project site, but also regionally what some of those challenges may be and how that might influence your work. So as you can see, there's a few slides here and some questions that are being asked. But again, I think this is pretty straightforward. But if anybody has any questions regarding that, happy to take a look at it. The discussion board here basically lays out those questions, as well as we have some assignment resources. So those are things to look at. And of course, with all of the work that we're doing here, we definitely want to check in with the rubric just to make sure that we're including everything that has been asked for. And again, this is what I use during the grading process. So let us take a look at sector compass. So this is a fascinating approach. Initial approach to land design is really, again, this whole site analysis. And today with the sector compass, we're taking a look at energy, well, we'll call them energies or influences that are found outside the site boundary. So what is going on outside of your project site boundary that potentially has an influence on your site? And some of those are pretty obvious when we're looking at the sun sector, we're looking at wind, looking at a fire sector, that is an important note, especially those that are on larger acreage. Some noise, perhaps there's a view corridor. Sometimes these go together. I know we've got a client that has a beautiful view corridor, but it also opens up corridor for noise coming off a highway. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. It could be wildlife, could be water flows. So perhaps your project site, you have water flows that you've witnessed coming onto the site from another property or off the street. So those are some pretty basic things. So what we want to do once we recognize the sectors is decide how we're going to deal with those. Are we going to amplify them? So what would be an example of that might be winter sun, right? So I know where I live, my wife lives, we have beautiful winter light that comes into the house, and that's something we would definitely want to amplify, not obstruct. Now the summer sun would be the total opposite. So we provide shading to the south side of our house over the windows during the summer months, and right now we're getting full light. So that would be one example. So deflect, that's another action that we're looking at, and that would be, again, example would be a summer heat. And you also have accept. Okay, so that is another thing to consider. Now, you can hear somebody in the background here. So what I might do is just mute everybody temporarily. Yeah, it seemed to be okay. All right. Yeah, so some of the elements we want to include. So obviously we're using our base map to build on, and we want to have our title block and our north arrow. And some of the things we definitely want to include here would be the sun sector. So we want that winter and summer sun sector along with a little description. We want to take a look at prevailing winds. And those might be seasonal, right? Those might be quite different in the summer as opposed to the winter. Your social sectors, so people in urban environments are going to be more apt to include those. We have pollution and noise. We also have wildlife and water. So those are a few that you definitely want to consider. And if we go to that template file, we will see a few of them here, a few examples. So if we just zoom out and slide over here, we can see a couple examples of students, past students. So basically what we want to do, we have this design sheet all set up, and you just have to drop in your base plan into the middle and then build these sectors around it. So you can see that there's quite a few on the left here, and the summer and winter suns. And if we go back to the assignment resources, you'll notice there are some resources here. For instance, the suncalc.org, that'll give you these solar angles, and I'll just kind of walk through how I calculate these or transfer them onto our design sheets. Got a wind finder. So there's a couple of things that you could dial into here that might help you out. But again, this is a great example. And we also want, and sometimes this is overlooked, but we want to have an idea of some of the nearest public locations to your project site. Okay, and if we look at, oops, that's the wrong lesson. If we look at just down the bottom here, so population center, closest fuel station, the nearest store, hospital, and public space, right? So you want to, and it should be pretty straightforward to fit all that onto one sheet. So this is a pretty full, a pretty full sheet, lots of information on it, but very informative. And what you might find is, and certainly we find this with our work, that this first sector map that we produce is something that we'll reference during the design process, and we'll make sure that we have covered off what we can, and that we're in alignment with what our clients are after. And that's one of the reasons we will produce this map and then have a quick meeting with them, make sure that this is indeed what they see, and making the adjustments accordingly. So that's about it for the sector map. You're going to have that SWOT analysis as well, which is can be a tricky exercise, but it should be pretty straightforward with this. Let me take a look at our Q&A document, so there's no questions about that. Does anybody have any questions they want to pop into the chat or unmute themselves about the sector map itself? I'm going to get a few examples that we've done for your viewing pleasure. Let me just stop that. Okay. And there's a sector map or sector compass, whatever you want to call it, of a acreage project. I think this is about 7 acres. And on this property, we had a pretty big fire sector. So basically, they had wooded area all the way around the perimeter, except for the southern portion. We have their winter and summer sun path, got their wildlife sector, and they do have a little bit of a flood sector or water sector at the northern and just northeastern part of the property, as well as privacy and prevailing winds. So we just put a little bit of a explanation on this up at the top corner, and then we'll have a little screenshot out of a spreadsheet just showing the sectors and what our plans are in terms of amplify, deflect, or utilize. So you can see with something like flood, of course, we want to be deflecting that at certain times of year, and we want to make use of it as well. So this is where it can get a little bit tricky. So that's one example. Let me just find another one here. Yeah, and here's another one. This is more of an urban setting. Again, the winter summer sun, a little bit of a flood potential from the northern part here from this roadway. And they have a privacy sector, which is quite large, and then a wildlife sector. And in an urban setting, we know that we have to basically would be relying on fencing for the wildlife, and there's not a really heavy deer pressure here. It's in a town center, so there isn't a huge deer population, but it does come along a bit. And then there's other design layers here that we won't worry about today, but one of those things that we will be going through just to show you what we provide as far as a deliverable goes. Let me just get down. We have a question here from Sean. Is privacy sector desired or existing? Well, that's a good question. I think what it should be is a lack of privacy sector. So there's a need for privacy in this area here. That's how I put these together. We're showing, yeah. Perhaps the wording could be a little bit different. But yeah, we're showing where the project site has some exposure that we want to minimize as much as we can. All right, and I think I have one more here I can show you. Okay, we can do that. And it's another urban project, not too far from where I am. And this is actually one project I was referencing where we have a view corridor right over here on the east side of the property, as well as that's basically where this noise sector is located. There's a highway running right by them. Luckily, they have probably a 15-foot earthen mound between the highway and the house, but it still does not do it all, I'll say. And we've done 3 phases of installation on this little site, and very, very noisy place to work. It's pretty hard actually in that regard, but yeah. So here we have fire, because this is an unusual situation where these are they're pretty small lots. Well, not small for Nanaimo, which is a city on Vancouver Island. It's about 100,000 people. But right behind them, they have a huge forested area, and it runs right into a large park. So they have all this wooded area up above them, and that again prompts the fire sector. They have wildlife all the way around, pretty heavy deer pressure. The summer and winters pathways here, privacy to a neighbor and the front road. And then they definitely had this flood sector here. We ended up they had some existing retaining walls that we removed and rebuilt. And it was quite an eye-opener, the amount of groundwater moving through this site, quite substantial during the winter months. Then we have prevailing wind. And I think that was about it. So the same sort of format. This is, for our clients, it's almost an educational experience, right? Not many of our clients have deep knowledge with regards to permaculture design or land design, period. So this is a little bit of an educational process as we walk them through. And I'm sure I've mentioned it before. We we'll put together these various layers where we're looking at the sector map, we look at our water layer, access, and soil. And after we finish each one, we will present these and go over them, usually through a Zoom meeting, just to show people how we're moving from point A to B. If we were to do the whole design and show them afterwards, it may be quite a long meeting to walk through it all. And they appreciate it, and it's very inclusive. So if, you know, as far as any editing goes, we certainly build that into our projects, and this is all about their landscape. It's not ours, so we want to make sure we get that right for them. All right, so let's see what else we can look at here. Maybe what I'll do is just walk you through one of the designs that we just finished up here. And if anybody has questions, please feel free to shoot them into the chat or unmute yourself. Yeah, look at this one. So this, for those that are hoping to use this course as a launching pad for yourself to do some design work for others, and you look at the template file that we're working with, it may feel a little bit daunting after the course to think, wow, how am I going to use this 150 page, 150 plus page document to produce designs for someone? And, you know, we get often, I'm often asked, you know, is that what I use? And it certainly isn't. We really have trimmed down our whole process. We have a questionnaire process we go with people. There's actually, we broke it down into about 20 different steps, but this is a little urban project that we did up in Qualicum Beach, which isn't too far from where we live. And this is the deliverables that we provided. So we did a sector map, and then during this meeting, we talk about some of our intentions going forward with the actual water layer. Then we did that water layer where we proposed a number of things, a couple of rain gardens. Normally we want to capture and slow down water as much as possible. And in this situation, we had asphalt shingle roofing, and we know that storing water off of that type of rooftop for reuse in the garden is a little bit tricky. We do not want to be applying that kind of water to any annual crops. You can get away with that on woody edibles, apparently. But so from our perspective, we see rain gardens as being a wonderful way to infiltrate water coming off the roof and make some attempts to remediate the hydrocarbon and fire retardants that are often part of that roofing system that end up in the water. So here we just have the roof divided up into 4 sections, and a little chart at the bottom showing us sort of average annual rainfall and how much we could potentially collect. So there's over 100,000 liters. And if we're looking at in gallons, that's going to be, let's see, about 20, we'll call it 25,000, about 25,000 gallons. And those are the proposals to place those in a larger rain garden at the front and a small one at the back. So this is kind of our first step as we look at water and this, in our opinion, really drives the landscape. So we put this before anything, including access, which is our next one here. So this is our access layer, which for us is, you know, footpaths, patios, any retaining or any fencing, you know, a lot of those hard landscape items would go into access. And that, of course, works into or overlays the water layer, which we have shown here. And in actuality, when we first did this water layer, this rain garden was a slightly different shape. So we realized once we hit this layer and the client wanted their entry off the road at this point, that we had to modify the shape of the rain garden a bit and join them. So we're joining both sides of the rain garden with the pipe below the pathway here. Yeah, we got a little patio, on-site parking. They wanted on-site parking in 2 locations, and a little workshop, not a shop, a little studio, and an outdoor area here. So this is all based on what our clients want in terms of usage of their project site. And then we get to the water, the soil layer, where we're actually just putting in some plants. And at this stage, they're not defined. So we don't really know, other than trees, shrubs, and perennials, we're not really defining what each individual plant is, although at this point, we've already done the planting plan. So yes, it's kind of reflected here, but typically our soil layers are a little more generic looking. This one has a bit of a busy look to it, but it's not usually like that. So we try and gray out all the other layers and kind of accentuate that. So there is our final concept. So all of these layers go together, right? So we have our access, we have our water, and we have our soil. And that makes up that, basically that initial concept that we then make any revisions to. And this is the final one here. And then we get into planting plan, and I'm not sure why those got some anomalies on the sheet here. Sorry about that. Plant list here, and all the plants are labeled. And then we get into a few details here as well. And that is basically what we do in terms of deliverables. And I'll show you maybe another one here as well. Yeah, this is another little urban one we did. Yeah, we blasted through our little Q&A here quickly, so we're on to other things. And certainly if anybody has questions, don't hesitate to pop them in the chat. Oh, I see one's come up. All right. So Nancy has a question. What kind of roofing do you recommend for that is best for water and permaculture use? Well, that's a good question. And Sergio is quite right. Metal is the favored material. Now, saying that, another really good material would be a living roof. And I've got a good friend who's got a cob house with a living roof, and they collect off of that. Now, the downside of a living roof is your coefficient factor, or the amount of water that you'll actually get during a rainfall event, is quite low. you only get about 10%. So metal, you're up above 90%. And in fact, we have a metal roof on our house. It's kind of a Cape Cod. It's not a giant house by any means, but we've been able, as of last week, we had a couple of big rain events here, and we were able to collect 11,000 gallons. So our storage is completely full, and we haven't even hit November yet. So we'd like to do way more. So we're sorting that out. We have a nice big rain garden, but we're thinking about putting another large rain garden in by our drilled well. Try and help that out as much as possible. Nancy's got another question here. Can fish survive in a pond? No, I would not be risking that, Nancy. That's when you're dealing with asphalt shingle, it's really tricky because in the first 5 years of the roof's life, when you've just had it put on up to about 5 years, you have this huge runoff potential for fire retardants and hydrocarbons. You get a lot of chemicals coming off the roof. And not only that, because they use sand, they basically put sand on top of the emulsion on the shingle to try and reduce the wear, get a lot of debris. So when we switched over from asphalt shingle to metal, and I could not believe the quality difference in the water in terms of debris, but also the quantity. Like I'm sure we're getting 95% of what hits the roof. It's quite amazing. I'll show you our system one day here. I've got some photos I can show you, but Sergio's got a comment here. What are your thoughts on using biochar to improve sandy loam's capacity? Well, that's I would say that biochar has a huge amount of potential, and we're just starting to really get a good handle on that. I know we bought a biochar kiln last year. We haven't used it yet. We will be soon because we're into the burning season, and we have sandy loam. So with this type, we're looking at in the future, we're seeing that we may have challenges getting compost. It's quite possible that these resources outside of our property are going to get harder to get, and not to mention expensive. Last year when we bought compost, it was almost $100 a cubic yard, and we have a big landscape, so that's a big investment. So we're hoping biochar is going to help us out. I think there's a lot of potential, not just with soil. I see it also being useful. I've heard it's been useful for to mix with animal bedding, right? The one challenge with biochar is you'll create it and then you have to grind it, and that can be quite a process. So you got to grind that down into smaller pieces, which can be a tricky process. But yeah, I'm looking forward to, I think there's great potential there, Sergio, and I'm hoping that we'll be running some unscientific tests at this end just to see how that goes in our setting. But I know you have to inoculate it first. So once we've created it, we're going to have to put it into some compost for probably 6 months, just so that soil biology can work its way into it. And so hopefully that answers your question, Sergio. We have another question from Tabitha. How large is your cistern for the roof rainwater? And what do you use to overflow it once it's full? Well, that's a really good question. I've got a few photos here. I can show you what our system's about. I just did a presentation last week to the district of Lanceville, where I live. And maybe that's the easiest thing to do. I'll bring that up. And we don't have just one cistern. We have 6, actually. Actually, you could say it's 7. Let me just show you. I'll just switch screens here. If anybody's interested, I posted a link. I taped this and posted it in Q&A. Where is there's yeah, this is a couple shots of our system here. So the beauty of some of this is that these are 3,000 gallon cisterns, these black ones. And we have 2 of these green ones that are 2,500 gallon. And believe it or not, these green cisterns, those are over 25 years old. They're doing really well. And we have them in a wooded area, just kind of at the edge of our forest. And we've used these for years, and then we added these 2, and we've subsequently added another one because we wanted to have one cistern. We're on a well, and we wanted one cistern that was full of potable water. So we're going to have 2,500 gallons filled from our well, and we're going to oxygenate it so that if we ever have a disruption, like if we had a large earthquake where I live, that could very well take out our well. And it would be months before there's any hope of regaining function of it. So we thought, well, let's just store it. And, there's 3 of us living here, and 2,500 gallons would probably be at least a year's worth of water for us. But we have basically these 4 staged up here. That's 11,000 gallons. And all of our roof water comes right to this point, right? And then we have the ability to push it into this little 50-gallon chamber, which is called a pump chamber. And it has a filter on it. Let me try and find the filter. There we are. So this is a different project, but this is the same idea. We have a basket filter, and then inside the basket filter, we put what's called a Tuffy filter. It's a filter that they've used in the dairy industry, of all places. And it's really well suited for what we're trying to do with rainwater if we are using a basket filter, because if we use this Tuffy filter, we will filter our water down to 40 microns, which is incredible. Very, very clean. So we have this set up with our chamber, and the water goes in, and we have an effluent pump inside of here. So it's just like a sump pump. And when the water comes up to a certain height, a float switch will turn the pump on and push that water out, and it goes up to our storage here, right? So it's the same idea. And then we're full now. We don't need any more water. So I have these sliding gate valves. So what I do is I close the pump chamber and open the pond. This goes off to our pond. And so the water bypasses this whole system now until, well, probably next summer, whenever we start using water again from our cisterns. And this is the overflow right here coming out of that pump chamber. So if there's, for some reason we lose power, it will overflow and head back into our drain heading to the pond. These are kind of crude photos, but it shows you a little bit there. let me just see what the other questions were on our chat.
That's a great first flush you have there, Jamie.
Yeah, I actually
On
don't, believe it or
oh,
not.
on the slide 27, I think it is, or a little higher.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Intense.
this is a great first flush, actually. This was designed for our clients and they installed this themselves and they did a pretty good job. The only thing they did wrong, well, we won't say it that way. The only room for improvement would be right here. This should have been cut higher because we want debris to be coming off of this roof and going off of this primary filter.
Yeah, cleaning that rain head would not be easy with that setup.
That's right. So they pretty much won't be able to clean it. But this is that initial part that is so important in rainwater systems where we're taking water out of our open air and we're putting it into our conveyance system, but we're now preventing any vectors from getting in because we have a rain head. Let's see, I got a picture of one. There we go. That has 1,000 micron filtration in it. So, 1 millimeter, but that's enough to keep mosquitoes, rodents, anything out of there that you don't want getting into your system. And that's a big part of this. And then, of course, once this fills up, this first flush filter, this is sized to the roof. And with that roof size, we calculated we wanted the first 0.5 millimeter of rain to get diverted. Because we know, especially after the summer, that first bit of rain that hits the roof is there's going to be all sorts of dust and contaminants on the roof itself. And that gets put into the first flush. And then it will slowly dribble out the bottom here once the rain event is finished up. So that fills up and then it goes along this piping and comes all the way around the corner and boom into this cistern right here and then fills all the way along. I'm trying to remember, I think we have with this system, this was a long time ago, but I think the system we had a Tuffy filter inside a basket here. So again, we're getting 40 microns of filtration, and that's something, it's way easier to filter it pre-storage. If you're trying to clean up your water after you've stored it, you're having to deal with all this potential debris inside of your cistern. And I must say, with our setup, we've never cleaned out the tanks. We just never had to. It's just not necessary. Yeah. So, oh, and that's a picture of our rain garden. It's still under production. But this was last year. We got this excavated out and planted the bottom before the first rain event. So it floods, right? And then in less than 24 hours, there's about 3,000 gallons here. In less than 24 hours, that's infiltrated. And this was kind of after we did a little more planting and mulching, and we still have a bit of work to do there. But the nice thing is this land slopes off right here, and we have an orchard below, and you wouldn't believe the positive effect this has had on our orchard this year. It's quite amazing. All right, see what other questions, Sergio. So you've got access to lots of biochar. Lucky you. Yeah, and Sergio's mentioned a fabulous resource here go back to, I can find my browser. There we are. So an excellent resource is a book called Rainwater Harvesting for Drylands and Beyond. That's Brad Lancaster's book. And there's 2 volumes. And it is fabulous. He's also got a really good website here, so that even without buying the book, there's a lot of good info that he's offering here on active and passive systems. They're both a little bit different. One's off of the roof, one's off of the ground. He also gets into sun and shade harvesting, and this, it's not something you'd expect in a rainwater harvesting book, but he's very much anchored in the permaculture world, so he realizes that all of these things tie together. But a fabulous book, highly recommend it. And we did actually run a course based on his books for a couple of years. I helped put that together, and it became challenging to run, in that we were using a lot of tools that it wasn't Google Earth. We were using another one. So it got quite tricky for people to run through the exercises using the technology that we had chosen. So I believe there is another course under production right now. All right. So we've gone through our sector compass, and we don't have any questions there. Let me get my chat window back. There we are. Yeah, so thanks for that, Sergio. Yes, Brad Lancaster. And I would highly recommend you check him out on YouTube. He has some really good videos, and he has done some amazing work in Tucson, Arizona. And I think part of the challenge in some ways is taking rainwater harvesting strategies that might work in Tucson and make them work on the west coast of BC or Oregon or Washington, in that our climate is so much different. We have so much, at least where I live, we have a tremendous amount of rainfall during the winter, but there are balances you can strike there. And yeah, again, I would highly recommend that. And thanks for mentioning that, Sergio. So Sean has a question here, wondering about the solar aspect when the existing area, hold on, existing surroundings are taken into consideration. Right. Yeah, that's a good question. When I personally, when I do the solar, I'll show you what I do. Let's see here. When I put together that solar aspect for the sector map, I do not factor in tree canopy. I'm just putting in what the actual sector is. So here is one of the resources that doesn't look like it's behaving too much. I'm just going to put in where I live. At least the town. So what you do with this, it's quite easy. We can just click on a specific date. So we'd want to know the winter solstice. So we'll go to December 21st. And that's going to give us our line here. So what I do is I'll take a screenshot of this, and which I'll do. And then what I do is I drop that into our design software. And I will just basically trace. If I can get my tool here, I'll just basically trace these lines. Oops. Try and get them accurate. And boom, there's my winter sun sector. And I know that that this is not cooperating, but it's the bottom of the screen. That's what I was getting at here. So yeah, that would be that's winter. So if we want to figure out summer, where we are in Lanceville here, we could just go to, oops, the correct date. And I would do the same thing. Basically draw or take a screenshot, boom. And there is our, and then include everything below, right? So a huge difference, of course. And it's quite unusual. We get students from all over the world. My other class that's going right now, they're in week or lesson number 8. I've got 2 people from Africa, Nigeria. I think they're both in Nigeria. Anyways, when they do their sun sectors, because they're near the equator, you know, they're it's almost imperceptible, the difference. So hopefully that helped you out, Sean. So yeah, don't worry about anything around your site other than that sector itself. So Ashley has a question. She's new to the Pacific Northwest. Barely ever see mulch around us in Portland. Is there a type to use or a reason it's rarely used? It's abundant in the Midwest, lots of pine bark, cotton burr, mulch, right? Well, I'm not sure about Portland, Ashley, but a couple of things in my area is for permanent plantings. When we're working on somebody's project, we're doing an installation, we always use the highest quality compost we can find. So that's something you might want to look at, is just compost suppliers in your area. Now, if we're in, let's say we're in more of a woodland permanent planting that doesn't need as much nutrition, we'll often look for arborist chips, right? So not bark, but actual chips. So from tree companies. That's something that you could look at. I believe there's a service called Chip Drop that you can sign up for, and they will deliver wood chips to your door. They coordinate with arborists in your area. So yeah, if you look around, I'm sure you'll be able to find really good quality compost as well as wood chips. So yeah, you're probably not going to find the materials that you're used to in the Midwest. So hopefully that helps you out, Ashley. Sergio is saying the Sun Surveyor app for phones is very helpful. Yeah, I'll show you another one here too. I use one on my phone. It's called Sun Seeker. There we are. This is a great app. So it's not very much money. In Canada, it's $10. So that's probably like $1 American. Just kidding. This is a great app. It has this augmented reality. So you can put it into this mode and change the view of your phone. And it's going to show you where the solstice is, where the sun currently is. So it looks like this is the winter and the summer solstice here. No, this looks like spring and winter. I'm not sure where summer is, but this is fantastic. We use this a lot. And nice thing is when you're in this mode, you can take a screenshot or a picture of that for later. And then it has these other modes here that are also very useful. So yeah, I totally agree. I'm sure Sun Surveyor is very similar. And Sean here. So it's not expected that you would design for where the sun actually hits. No, we're not. Funny enough, that might be a very tricky exercise, but you're going to have to kind of sort that out during your site visits. But we just want a general overall, right? So especially when we're looking at vegetation, you know, it is existing. Some of it may, you may decide that you want to remove, or, you know, in terms of trees. So yeah, we want to design for where the site is, sun is actually coming up. And Stefan here says chip drop's awesome. Well, you got 8 loads, right on. And you can specify what wood you won't take. Right. Yeah. And good question, Ashley. What type of wood do you not want? Where I live, Western red cedar is something you'd probably want to avoid. But saying that, where I live, we can take hundreds of yards of wood chips and let them sit there. So if you did get cedar, you just have to let them sit for a few years until all those oils have left the wood itself, and then it can start to get into a state where it will decompose. But where I live, arbutus or madrona, that's really nice wood chips. Even alder, they're beautiful. We have a mill not too far from us. They do maple or alder chips, and they're very nice. We have to pay for those, of course, but yeah, lots of really good resources. So Sergio's talking about eucalyptus. Yeah. Yes, anything that has a really strong odor, those are probably most likely compounds that resist decomposition. So you want those to basically be flushed out or removed before they're going to start to decompose for you in your landscape. All right. Well, we are at 10 o'clock here. Does anybody have any questions they want to have answered before we sign off for today? Okay, doesn't look like it. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining me today. I do really enjoy these Q&As, and yeah, I really look forward to seeing your compass maps, sorry, sector compass or sector map next Monday. And if anybody runs into any trouble during the next week, do let me know, and I'll do everything I can to help you out. But it is pretty straightforward assignment. I think most of the problems people might have would be related to the graphics and using Google Slides, but hopefully that's pretty straightforward for everybody. Anyways, yeah, everybody have a great week, and thank you again. We'll look forward to seeing your work next week. So bye for now.